Hello again, this is Dr. Jimmy, and it's still the 4th of July. Yes. I have a little bit of time left before I go off and have some hot dogs and fireworks and all the fun things we do to celebrate our independence. And I'm still wearing Legendary Truth t-shirt. Lenny the cat is still sleeping over there on the other side of the room. And will she make a cameo appearance? I think she's taking a power nap, so probably not this time. And so this is my 7th video in the history of the event, Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights 25, which was held at Universal Studios, Florida in the year 2015. And finally, after all sorts of background information and having fun talking about Freddy and Jason and all that crap, I finally get to the point where I can talk about the damn house itself. Yes, Freddy versus Jason, the haunted house. And when you entered the haunted house, you're at Camp Crystal Lake. What joy, and there's a dead guy right in front of you. Someone's been killed by Jason, and you go in to the camp, into the cabin, and you've got all kinds of bunks all over the place, and sure enough, Jason's popping out at you from all over because he's pissed off, he's angry, and he thinks you're one of those naughty camp counselors. And they've got it very cleverly behind some scrims and things, so you're not sure he's there until, oops, there he is. And they do recreate bits from some of the old movies. You go through one of the bathrooms, there's a girl in a shower with an axe in her head, right from the first movie. There's the altar to Mrs. Voorhees with the head, and it's there just like in Friday the 13th Part 2, and just like in Freddy vs. Jason, you hear Mrs. Voorhees' voice telling Jason to go punish the children. I guess it's actually Freddy pretending to be her to send him on the mission, because it does incorporate bits from Freddy vs. Jason, but also from many other Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies. So you're going through Camp Crystal Lake, and you see the cabins and victims, people been killed in nasty ways. And then as you go through there, you come into Elm Street, and there's like a huge facade in the middle of the house. And it's the whole, I forget the 14-something. It's the house on Elm Street, the house Nancy had lived in all of its glory, right there in front of you. And there's creepy little girls skipping rope, and their eyes are missing, and they're skipping rope and they're singing, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. You know, the wonderful little song that we remember from the movies. And so you enter the house, of course, and as you go in, there's the stairs up to one side. Now, you don't get to go up the stairs and your feet get caught in marshmallow fluff like in the Nightmare in the movie, because the stairs actually don't really go anywhere. They're just a prop to make it look, the days of having staircases that you can actually use in haunted houses at horror nights is long past. But you go through there, and you go through hallways of the house, and there's like a big sign, blood on the wall, Freddy's back. And you go some different rooms. There are different kills from many different Nightmare on Elm Street films. And of course, Freddy's jumping out, with his claws on several occasions. But you see, for example, the girl who got her head slammed up in the it's prime time, bitch! That one, that kill. Oh, there's Lenny. Lenny tail. That was Lenny's tail. Say hello to everybody, Lenny. Say hello. Hello, Lenny. Hello. Hi, everybody. She's pissed now because I grabbed her. She doesn't like that. Tail in the face. There's a typical. So Lenny is here playing 1, 2, Lenny's coming for you. And, yeah. So you see that one where the girl's slammed up into the telly. There's the big worm Freddy eating somebody. There's the poor bastard from Dream Warriors, that the boy that was turned into a puppet, and his tendons are the strings. There's all these great kills from different Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but mainly Dream Warriors. When you get through that, you go down to the boiler room. It's sort of the boiler room, but it's sort of like a full of mirrors, and there's Freddy's coming out, and then there's Jason. Where'd he come from? So he's there too. Then you get into the conflict scenes, and they used a lot of screens. Some people don't like it, but they also have live characters mixed in with the screens. But you see Freddy and Jason fighting each other on several screens, and one screen Freddy's winning, another screen Jason's winning. And as you come around, there's a Freddy coming after you. And then you find yourself in a nightmare. Freddy has put Jason in a nightmare, thrown him back into Crystal Lake. You're under fucking water. You can look up and there's a boat, the bottom of a boat, and there's a bra, like a bra hanging off of it, so somebody's skinny dipping or something. And there's there's fish and an otter. There's an otter above you, so it's like you're underneath the lake. And then there's little boy Jason, the little boy that drowned the lake. He's like, ah, because he's drowning and he's underwater. And then there's Freddy again coming after you. I think he's dressed as somebody from Camp Crystal Lake, which is kind of bizarre. You go through that, and now Jason and Freddy are fighting again. And there's 2 or 3 scenes of them fighting. We see Jason putting his machete into Freddy. Freddy sticking his claws into Jason. They're fighting and killing each other. Who wins? All right, when you come out of the haunted house, there's one last scare. One last scare. And there's a curtain. And out from the curtain, as you're walking out of the house, comes one last scare actor. And depending on which cast and which time you go through, it's either Jason holding Freddy's head. So Jason has won. And sometimes it's Freddy and he's got Jason's mask in his claws. So Freddy has won. So depending on that, you could you could play a game. You could go through the house many, many times and keep track. How many times Jason won, how many times Freddy's won. I believe my personal count, and I went through the house dozens of times when I went to Halloween Horror Nights 25, many, many times, at least once a night, sometimes 2 or 3 times a night, and by the end of the event, Jason was the winner, so I got that cast most often, I guess. For me, it could be different for someone else. It depends on which cast you went through how many times. So, it was a cool house, and it took me, 2 or 3 hours to go through the lead up, and then what was it now? 5 minutes to finish the house? 7 minutes? That's ridiculous. So let's go to the next house then, which was also in Soundstage 24, the 4th house of the event, which was called Body Collectors Recollections. This house had been promoted throughout the event. Before the event, Michael Aiello kept giving us clues. Oh, yes, he doesn't do that way anymore because he doesn't do the social media Horror Nights ORL Twitter anymore. Damn! But when he was doing it in 2015, he told us that one of the houses that he liked the best at creating was an original house. He didn't tell us what it was, but the code name was Blizzard. Oh my God, a Dairy Queen house. What was Blizzard? Everyone was trying to ponder what Blizzard could be. How exciting. What would it be? And when it turned out, when it was revealed, Blizzard was this house. And it's another crossover, a mashup of 2 of the most popular franchises, original franchises in Halloween Horror Nights history. The Body Collectors and Psychoscarapy. And will I go on a lengthy, too long, over-wordy description of the history, the complete history of both Psychoscarapy and Body Collectors? Fuck no. If you want to hear what that is, go back. I made videos about the events where those houses originally appeared. So go back and listen to me talking about all the other Body Collectors and Psychoscarapy houses in the appropriate videos back in that I made years ago. So why would I repeat myself? That would be ridiculous. So why would I repeat myself? That would be ridiculous. Oop. Anyway, why would I No, not going to do it a 3rd time. That would be stupid. Yes. Anyway, so Body Collectors Recollections The idea is Shady Brook Asylum is older than we thought it was. Originally, we thought it was established like in the 1920s or something. It had that, or 1930s. It had that neat Art Deco look, right? In fact, there's some of the one where it looks like it was established in the 60s or 70s. So maybe it got re-established, or maybe it's a chain. Shady Brook Asylums around the country, I don't know. This is supposed to be the original Shady Brook that was built in the 19th century, and it's not even the same building. This is an older building, looks rather Tudor, kind of old-style mansion. And the original man who built it, perhaps it was his original home, but he turned it into an asylum. And apparently, right about the time the asylum first opened, there was a horrific blizzard. As a matter of fact, there were some horrific blizzards in New England, and are actually in America, I should say, in the 19th century. There was one that happened like in spring, and it was snowbound all the way across the East Coast and into the Midwest. It was even snowing in Florida, you know, down in Miami. Well, not, yeah, in Miami. It was terrible. One of the worst blizzards ever on record, back a couple of times over 100 years ago. So it was kind of creepy, but yes, the blizzard struck, and wouldn't you know it, it was at this moment that the body collectors, those smiling gentlemen, arrived at Shady Brook Asylum looking for victims. And everyone in the asylum was snowed in and couldn't get out. Both the staff and the doctors and nurses, as well as the poor patients. What would happen? Well, carnage, of course. Yes. So, going into the house, it's this beautiful mansion, and it says Shady Brook in 18-something, 50-something, and you go in there, and it's all frozen over and ice and snow. It's actually a little cool on Soundstage 24. Actually, it wasn't that cool. We just imagined it was cooler than it should be, because they weren't able to refrigerate it, but it felt cool when I went in. I don't know why. Maybe I got caught in the rain. But you go in there, that was the first time at least. And I did have a friend, I told him, there's like a metal pole. Put your tongue on that pole, I double dog dare you. Dumbass did. Didn't stick, of course, but he probably got all kinds of air on his tongue. Anyway, going inside, the first thing you see in the beautiful foyer is some poor bastard's been killed and thrown into the fireplace, getting all crispy, and there's music that seems hauntingly familiar and weirdly anachronistic because it wasn't composed until, you know, several decades or 100 years later. The song "It's a Summer Place." Da, 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 da. Why was that playing? How could it be playing before it was ever written? And where's this recording from? Outer space? Is there a time warp here? I don't know. But it's on an old-fashioned Victrola with a big, you know, one of those wax cylinder things with the big tube, the big floral like trumpet's what I'm looking for. And so there's also something very interesting in that first room. On one of the shelves was a little golden idol, which is from Indiana Jones. That thing pops up a lot over the years in different haunted houses. But going into these rooms, into padded cells, and you see the body collectors attacking and killing the doctors and nurses and slitting the throat of one of the doctors right in front of you. Throat slitting seemed to be a thing at this Halloween Horror Nights. That you could have played a drinking game. Every time you saw someone get the throat slit, you get sloshed. But that happened there. And then you go inside and you discover that the cells, there's many cells inside Shady Brook where the inmates, and some of them have been tortured and killed already and body parts taken, and some have been transformed into those horrible assistants. Remember, they wear straitjackets and muzzles like they used in old asylums. You see, that's where the body collectors got their assistants. They got them from Shady Brook. They took some of the more insane, demented people, the more dangerous criminal maniacs from Shady Brook, and turned them into their insane assistants. Now that explains their whole appearance all these years. Damn, there's a connection we never knew about before. And there's more. So you go into these different cells and you see some demented people are screaming. The same hallway you had in Echoes of Shady Brook is there, and you have very similar to Echoes of Shady Brook with the mirrors and the windows and people outside, except there's snow all over the place now and frozen. Very similar scares in that scene. But when you go into the cells themselves, there's like one where a guy was there and he was torn up and there's some dogs in there, and it was like Game of Thrones, man. I was just thinking it's like the what's the bastard's name? Damn, I don't remember the name. So remember Greyjoy, the Greyjoy, Theron, whatever his name is, Theon, was thrown into the cell and made into reek. Remember, by that horrible bastard, the one that finally got killed by Jon Snow last season. You know who I mean if you watch Game of Thrones. But he had all the dogs, right? And so there's this guy in there, and I think, it's Reek. It's Reek from Game of Thrones. Oh my God. It wasn't, but that's what it reminded me of. But the most interesting cell with various demented people, some are being tortured and some are screaming for help and some are horrible, crazy who are going to come after you, was one where there was a woman. And she's cackling and insane. And if you look in the cell, there's two baby baskets. And one of the baby baskets, in both of them there's an infant. And one, the infant, in little swaddling clothes, and one of them has a shock of bright red hair sticking out in strange directions like two big, and something familiar. The other baby's got dark black hair and is wearing a black blanket. The other one's got, and it's holy fuck. What's implicated is an amazing thing. It suddenly became clear. Jack the Clown has always had an odd connection to Shady Brook, and now we realize he was born there. Over 100 years ago, Jack and Eddie were born in Shady Brook Asylum, and the body collectors came, and they're too small to be used. Too small to be used for body parts, so they adopted them. Exactly. I'm filling in some blanks, but the implication is Jack was in there. That's his origin. He was born in Shady Brook, like Freddy Krueger, a bastard son of some maniacs. And his brother Eddie, his twin brother. Twins! Who knew Jack and Eddie were twins? I never knew that. Fraternal twins, obviously. But that was a new thing that changed everything. I guess Jack was born first for Eddie to be his little brother. Or maybe that's just what he calls him. So that was a weird origin of Jack and Eddie that we didn't know about until we saw the babies in the house. Then you go into the grand rooms. It was shorter than I'd liked it to be, this house. And there's this huge place. You go to some killing rooms. You go into one where there's a body collector and he's working a table and there's bits and pieces. And of course, what you always have to have in every body collector's house, you have the operating theater, which I guessed in Shady Brook was for lobotomies, but here they're doing the spine extraction, of course. The glorious spine extraction and the golf clap response. Then after that, there's a room with a big table in the middle, and it's circular, and you go all the way around from one side to the other to the music of Mozart's Requiem. Dies irae, dies ira, sovet fecum, ex favilla, cum te David cum sabila. Dun, da, 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 da. Sorry, just couldn't help it. So you go through the Mozart's Requiem is here, and there's a body collector on the table. He's this tall guy in a red smoking jacket, sort of, and he's like the leader in charge, and he's over there smiling at everyone. And as you walk past in each alcove, you suddenly realize what's going on. It's not just the origin of Jack and Eddie and of the body collector's assistants, but you understand how body collectors come to be and why they collect bodies, because in the first there's collectors throughout the room with their smiley grins, but what you see they're doing, in one there's a body being hoisted up on chains, in the next one the body's head has been removed and there's blood, and so the next one is a head, a body collector head, being put onto the torso, and by the time you get around, it's been turned into a body collector. They take the body parts from different humans and put them together and make their bodies out of them, twisting them, torching them, getting them to grin, taking the hair off, turning them into the gentlemen themselves. In other words, they're making their own. They're not born, they're created from the body parts of their victims. The reason for collecting body parts is not just because they're scientists and they're interested in having a laboratory filled with specimens. No, it's procreation. It's how you make more body collectors. Ew, how interesting. Didn't know that. Then after this fantastic room, you go through a sort of corridor as you exit, and there's more body collectors and also Shady Brook inmates around you, and one of them's a dwarf. Again, who seems to be there for no good reason, except to remind me of Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones. So, were they actually meant to remind you of Game of Thrones in this house or not, I'm not sure, but there was a dwarf and there was a guy in a cell like Reek, like Theon Greyjoy, Theon Greyjoy, and one like Lancaster, what's his name? It also starts with a TH sound. I don't know. I have to start. I can't wait till the next season, then I'll remember all the names again. But you know the guy, the dwarf. So from Game of Thrones, he's like one of the few characters that are actually admirable. Him and Khaleesi. That's what I want to happen on Game of Thrones. I want them to get on a dragon, fly and kill everybody off, and take over the kingdoms, and the two of them can reign happily ever after, the Khaleesi and the dwarf together, because they're the ones who should be running Westeros, as well with Easteros as well, whatever the hell the other one's called. They can just rule the whole kingdoms together, because they're the only decent people in the whole series. But enough of that. That's not what we're talking. We're not talking about dragon boobs. We're talking about body collectors. So that was that house. Wow. It took me all those times to get through Freddy versus Jason. I'm already done with body collectors. Excellent. So what's next? I won't finish this one. Not in this video. That'll be part 8 when I get to it. But I might, but I doubt it, because there's a lot to talk about. So that was the soundstage houses, right? I covered 4 soundstage houses, 24B, 24A. So we come then to the house that was in the disaster overflow queue area. The last house ever to be in disaster overflow queue area. Which is now gone, because they've taken out the whole disaster, and they've taken out Beetlejuice stage, and something fast and furious will be showing up next year there. Until then, we won't have any more haunted houses in that area, and I don't know if the Fast and Furious attraction will have a queue area, an extended queue area, or any part of that structure that will be good to put houses in. I hope they're smart enough to build with Halloween Horror Nights in mind, but somehow I don't, you never know. But that would be smart if they had that idea. But at any rate, the house was called Run, Blood, Sweat, and Fears. And like Body Collectors, which also, of course, celebrated the 25th anniversary of bringing back 2 of the favorite franchises, this brought back Run, which has been a fan favorite, especially amongst hardcore fans. Run, of course, was going to have been Eddie's house. Back in 2001, they took him out of it. It was like a sort of game show theme. The second Run house, which was Hostile Territory in 2006, was inspired heavily by the motion picture Hostel, which had nothing to do with it, but basically it turned more into that sort of killing ground for pleasure, and Eddie was in that house that time. And now Run, Blood, Sweat and Fears goes sort of back to the roots, the idea of having a game show, but in this case it was also inspired, not adapted, by a Stephen King property. And of course they had to be careful because Mr. King doesn't want his stuff in haunts. But this was not a direct adaptation, but strongly inspired, not from King's own book, The Running Man, which wasn't even written by King, but by Richard Bachman, which of course was one of King's pseudonyms when he wanted to see if books would sell that he wrote without it being Stephen King on the cover. And sure enough, they sold a hell of a lot better when people found out Richard Bachman and Stephen King were the same person. But The Running Man, the story is quite different from The Running Man, the movie, which turned into a crazy science fiction action comedy with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But borrowing from the idea of the movie, we have a dystopian future, we have the contestants in The Running Man, and we have reapers out to kill them. But, so these things were utilized. We have the runners wearing costumes similar to Schwarzenegger's, sort of spandex leotard. We do have reapers, international reapers from different countries who are trying to kill them. And it's set in the same sort of twisted future, but also, gloriously, an alternate universe and in the 1980s, which fits into when the Running Man movie was made. So it's a real homage to that movie without being a direct adaptation of it. And they twisted it even further to make it fucking crazy. And also, bizarrely, as part of Halloween Horror Nights 25, to celebrate the past and bring back stuff, not only was the Run franchise, which in a way the name of it was Run, and they did have the same old Run sign from the first one, and on one occasion Eddie did show up, but that was just because the fumes from his chainsaw and was getting to be dangerous in the area where he was at the end of Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters and Mayhem, so they took him out of that house temporarily for a little bit near the end of the event, and they let him go into the Run house where he was hanging out near the end with the Russian reapers showing up to as a fun cameo appearance. I think it was only one night he did that. The rest of the time they put him into one of the scare zones until it was safe for him to go back and Jack Presents. But getting back to thing, it also was an homage to another celebrated haunted house from Horror Nights past, Hellgate Prison, which had been one of the favorite houses back in Halloween Horror Nights 14, when they had both parks, islands, and the studios in the year 2004. So this house was set in Hellgate Prison in this alternate reality future of the 1980s. In fact, when you go through the house, if you pay really close attention, which is hard to do because the guys in the black with their flashlights keep saying, move along, you know, keep walking, and catch up with the people in front of you, which is difficult to do, as I've said before, when you're a middle-aged man who walks with a slight limp, and the people in front of you are like 14-year-olds who are running madly through the house, and you're like, how am I supposed to catch up with them? Dag nabbit. Get off my yard, kids! Shake my fist at them. Get off. Stay off of my yard. But if you tried to pay attention, you could realize that all the different rooms are different places inside Hellgate Prison, like a cafeteria, locker rooms, showers, there's different cell blocks, all kinds of different places in Hellgate Prison that corresponds to the original sets. There's even the electrocution chamber where Old Smokey, which was the electric chair in Hellgate Prison. All of these things are in there. They correspond. And if you pay attention, you realize it's just an overlay over Hellgate. Although it was in a different area, it was in a soundstage. But they recreate this in this weird futuristic reality TV game show like Survivor, only this time if you win you do survive, and if you lose you die. And the idea, there's a wonderful Q video, spectacular Q video, and a fellow who was an actor at Universal back then named Austin was playing Bobby Strickland, the grandson of the original Robert L. Strickland, the warden of Hellgate Prison. Today he's better known as Mike Rome, an announcer for wrestling. And he was playing this part. He was the MC, and he was talking about the show and about different Reapers and presenting the whole thing. And I will go into the backstory further, because there's so much more backstory for this house. It's incredible, and so many details and fun. It's going to take probably the whole 8th video, but I'm out of time for part 7. But I described 2 full houses in this one, so you can't blame me this time. Next video, run Blood, Sweat and Fears in depth. All right, until then, God bless America. It's still the 4th of July. Go out, have fun. Safety, don't blow off any of your fingers and don't eat too much hot dogs. Want to be around for July 5th. It's always a little poignant, July 4th. Today would have been Bob the Cat's 13th birthday. So, a moment of silence. All right. Bye-bye till next time.